Hi, so I'm Graham Uney. I'm one of the felt-top assessors for the Lake District National Park, and I thought we'd just have a look at the stuff that I carry in my rucksack as part of our #SummitSafely campaign. Okay, so first of all, I would say most important thing to have is a pair of waterproofs. Jacket and trousers are absolutely essential, and they're obviously, the idea is to keep the water out, but ideally they also keep the wind out as well, so that'll help your core temperature to keep nice and warm. So they're absolutely essential in any conditions, not just in winter conditions. Moving on from there, it's sort of the insulation layers, and that can be nice insulation jackets, down jackets, or even fleeces or woolly jumpers if you haven't got that. Just lots of insulation layers in the winter is essential. More layers is good because it traps air in between those layers, so it helps you to keep warm. Okay. Added to that is hats. So I usually have a hat on my head, and as standard I always have at least one more spare hat, and that might be for myself if the hat blows away, or it might be to hand out to somebody else that's getting cold. So spare hats are always good. Gloves, I typically have a thin pair of gloves for when I'm walking around, and then as soon as I get into the snow line and I start digging around in the snow, I'll take those off and I'll swap them for a sturdier pair of gloves. And usually when I'm instructing on the winter skills courses, I also have spare gloves for other people. So I'll have a couple of spare gloves and some really, really warm woolen mitts that I'll hand out to other people. Moving on to the more technical kit, we've got things like the crampons that are absolutely essential again in winter. If you're going to be walking on hard snow or ice, you need crampons in order to be able to walk. Okay, and over there we've got an ice axe. So really it's pretty foolish to go into the winter hills without an ice axe. As we said earlier, you can either use it to cut steps in the snow, or if things do go a little bit wrong and you start to slide down a snow slope, you can use that as a brake to stop you sliding any further. Okay, so one of the other things I carry is a snow shovel. I wouldn't really go into the hills in winter without a snow shovel. I use it partly for the felt-top assessor job, for digging around in the snow to see what the snowpack's doing, but also worst case scenario, if there were to be an avalanche, you could also obviously use it to help dig somebody out of an avalanche. Group shelter is really useful. So it's just basically a big bag that goes over the entire group of people you're with, and they come in different sizes, so you can buy one according to the size of group that you're out walking with. But that's really good for keeping the wind off again, good in an emergency as well, but particularly good for just having a sandwich on a really grotty day. So use group shelters regularly. First aid kit, there's loads of stuff in there, probably bigger than most people would want to carry, but basically a few plasters, some Compeed for blisters is really good, some painkillers, maybe an airway for giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and a couple of bandages. That's the sort of standard basic first aid kit. Food, I've eaten most of mine today, but I always have some spare food, spare banana, spare sandwich, and a hot drink as well. Cold drinks work well, but you've got to make sure that it doesn't freeze in the flask, so a thermos flask of some sort is a good idea to keep even a cold drink from freezing. Head torches, so head torch in case you're caught out after dark, or you might actually choose to deliberately stay out after dark, because that's good fun as well. And it's a good idea to have a spare just in case, or a spare battery for the head torch you're carrying. Map and compass, absolutely essential. That's probably one of the most essential pieces of kit. Bearing in mind that navigation in the winter hills is harder than in the summer, because the paths you might be following in the summer are all going to be covered in snow in the winter, so you really need to be able to use a map and a compass correctly. Mobile phone is absolutely essential as well. I think most people tend to have them going into the hills these days, but should you need to make an emergency call, the mobile phone is going to help you. And if it happens to be a smartphone, then in the worst case scenario, the mountain rescue teams can actually use the GPS data on your smartphone to work out where you are. The other thing I've got here that most people wouldn't carry is a little green Kestrel device, and that's what, as felt-top assessors, that's what we use to measure our wind speed and temperatures actually on the Helvellyn Summit Plateau. And finally, something to put it all in. So a good sturdy rucksack, big enough to put everything in. You don't want things stuck on the outside of your rucksack, and ideally I would use a rucksack liner just to stop the stuff on the inside getting damp if it's chucking it down with rain. Okay, so that's what I carry typically in my rucksack on a day-to-day basis on Helvellyn. It'd be really good to see what you carry in your rucksack using hashtag Summit Safely.